Hello and welcome to my review on why I am DNFing Barry Malzberg's On the Planet Alien at page 78, which is halfway through it, and the beginning of chapter 10. I'm not enjoying it. It's pointless. It's got 160 pages, so that's around about halfway through. So far, I've gained no enjoyment whatsoever. I have got no idea what story he thought he was telling, but whatever it was, I don't think he's succeeding. Yeah, aside from the cover, the only good thing about this book is the rather nice cover and good artwork. Let me read you the back for starters. The mission was to Folsom's planet, the purpose to educate the native inhabitants and bring them within the Federation. But Commander Hans Folsom was worried. Something had happened on the voyage, but he could not remember what. A runic stone he had found on the planet seemed to have a power of its own, and now the messages from Earth were becoming meaningless. Then there was the crew. Were they educating the natives correctly, or were they traitors, or was Commander Folsom going mad? Could it be that some unknown force was controlling his mind, a force that could bring disaster to the mission? It actually sounds like it's science fiction. But so far, it hasn't been. So far, it's just been dribble. So, Barry Malzberg, I got this book and one other by him because he's one of those classic names in science fiction. I couldn't remember him well. I thought I might have read some of his books when I was younger. I gave the Sodom and Gomorrah business a go last year. I didn't like it and I reviewed it poorly, but I think it gave it 2 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. This one I think barely rates a 1. No, it rates negative stars. I would give this 3 negative stars if I could, because it is meaningless. Now, Malzburg, the only interesting thing that to come out of this book was me researching Malzburg online. So, he apparently wanted to be a playwright originally. He didn't do well at that. He couldn't sell any of his work to the literary magazines of the era. He ended up devolving into writing, do they call it soft porn? I don't know. He wrote adult content under his own name and several other names. And then he found his way into sci-fi. First published story was in 1967, and eventually he wrote surreal stuff for the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. He was still writing surreal stuff here. His actual writing is overly fruity, it's florid. I can't tell if it's meant to be humor, or if it's meant to be ironic, or if it's meant to be... I guess it's meant to be English. Many people liked him, including Theodore Sturgeon, an author I really respect. But me and Sturgeon, we're parting ways on this one. So let's take a couple of paragraphs. And the paragraphs themselves are a problem, because normally you have full stops at the end of sentences, but here he does full stops at the end of paragraphs and once or twice at the end of a page. That's how I used to write when I was 13 or 14 and didn't know how. It's like one full page. Oh, it's the end of the page. Let's put a full stop there now. Sure, why not? You couldn't possibly, no one not in the specialty could have been unable to establish contact. We're getting resistance at levels which cannot even be articulated, and furthermore, oh. He stops. Talking as we've been moving, we break through a clearing, find that we are standing on a small cliff overlooking a primitive settlement. The natives move amidst huts which are poised in a large square, and that square there's actually a smoking pot, a few horses tethered and sleeping. Have we figured the problem here? We're meant to be billions of light years from Earth, and there's horses tethered? You reckon that might be a problem? But no, none of this select crew seem to notice that. So let's talk about the select crew. There's 4 of them. Our Commander Folsom is the commander. He serves no other function. He's got no actual skills whatsoever. And a crew of 4 that have travelled for 3 years in hibernation to get there. They'll be travelling 3 years back. And he's got no skills. He gets to this planet and he's got one person who's meant to be a geologist. No apparent evidence of it. He does no geology. There's one person who's meant to be a linguist and spends all their time trying to communicate with the one native that they get. And we've got Folsom, who can do nothing. What's he doing there? The narrative, I can't tell what this language is. Is it naive? Is it pompous? Is it batshite crazy? I'd go with all of those things, but what it is not is informative, and what it is not is fun. Some people apparently like this. I feel that people who like listening to Philip K. Dick drivel all over the page of meaninglessness will probably enjoy this level of meaningless as well, but I had to skim read through pages to find 1 or 2 isolated words that relate to the plot, or indeed anything else. The sole female of the party, Nina, is the designated partner of Folsom. She is treated wholly as a lust object. She isn't human, so the misogyny level is subtly over the top. Like the other Malzburg that I read, I don't know exactly if Malzburg himself was violently homophobic, but he comes across that way. Maybe he's trying to do something that in the 60s made sense, but now doesn't. No, but I'm going for homophobic. The other 2 members of the crew are in a homosexual relationship. He is regularly, Folsom, that is regularly abusive towards them while claiming that he's not actually homophobic, but yeah, none of it makes sense. We'll talk about, so this is in the 60s. There was actually good science fiction there and happening then. And here we've got people sleeping for 3 years on the way to the planet, apparently lying on beds, entangled limbs, horses on this other planet, a team of 4, none of whom actually do any science. None of this makes any sense. I think Malzburg is trying to write it as the Bureau is some sort of autocratic, controlling, brainwashing thing, but it's not working. Nothing in here works. The Bureau that Folsom continually raves about is obviously not what Folsom thinks it is. But what it is, we don't know, and the chances of being able to find out are very limited because we see everything through Folsom, who is batshit crazy. However, on page 39, this is a juicy quote. He writes, where is it? With his fine, lucid commander's intelligence, he wonders whether or not this might have been deliberate. Whether the rock in some way is not perhaps sentient, was trapped under the earth, longing to get out of it, was emitting strange thought rays, which, operating on the pleasure principle, induced an onlooker to help it separate itself. I feel like Malzberg's extensive adult content writing is coming out here. And I'm not saying that it isn't funny having Folsom frotterize a rock in the ground, but the problem is that he keeps on regarding it as a rock. He digs it out, he finds it's incredibly light, he can lift something the size of more than half his body, but he's still calling it a rock, even when it's hollow inside, so it's not a rock. Yet he continues regarding it as a rock. Then electronic writing appears on it and changes, and yet it's still a rock. I don't know what Malzburg is doing, but it's batshite. It's absolutely meaningless. So having excavated it and frotterized it and been attracted to it and repelled by it, he carries it back to his settlement. The electronic writing that's running all over it doesn't seem to entail any more interest value than the fact that this alien species on a planet far from Earth has horses. I mean, that hurts. That hurts. Sure, they don't have any biologists, but surely they've got... No, they don't even have any creatures that are allegedly intelligent humans, because none of these come across as human or intelligent or in anything but brain dead. The only way that Folsom and his crew could possibly come across as humans is if the future foretold by the film Idiocracy, great movie by the way, has already come to pass, and these are the results of it. Because if they've got 3 brain cells to rub together between the 4 of them, it's not noticeable by chapter 10. Chapter X. I'm sure Malzburg just loved that. Now, okay, so the final nail in the coffin of me reading this hot, steaming pile of bollocks came at the end of this last chapter, when they've taught the one native who wants to communicate with them how to speak, and the captain isn't interested because he's batshit crazy, and they've called him Ezekiel and indoctrinated him in Old Testament mythology and told him that they're thunder gods, which goes against the Bureau's apparent, alleged way of behaving. And when Folsom objects, the rest of the crew tell him he's crazy, which he probably is because he's screaming, but nothing that they've done comes across as anything but crazy either. And then, having repeatedly told us how he pulled this electronic hollow light rock back to the settlement and showed it to the others who weren't interested, he pulls Nina over to see it again, and she says, "Why didn't you tell us about it?" But we've already heard repeatedly how he has told them about it. So if Malzburg is trying to convince us that Folsom is going crazy, it's not working purely in that we've never had any example of him being anything but crazy. So none of it makes any sense. And then he rapes Nina. I don't get quite why, but I think that's Malzburg and his inherent strange issues about sexuality. The Sodom and Gomorrah business was all about women being raped as well. So, and homophobia. So Barry and Malzburg in my brain right now equals bad writing, florid, weird stream of consciousness shite, misogyny, rape, and overt homophobia. So not going for any more Malzburg. And many people have complained over the years that I review books that I haven't finished. I could finish this, but you would have to pay me. You would have to pay me a lot. You could probably not afford to pay me enough to make me finish reading this book, though. Possibly Elon Musk could. Not sure about that even. It would cost a lot to make me read this book. It's horrible. It's unpleasant. And it is inherently stupid. So Malzburg does get a certain amount of acknowledgement from his co-authors. He was widely praised by critics while being attacked by proponents of hard science fiction, apparently, according to Wikipedia. But I agree, there is no science fiction in this. There's no hard science fiction because there's no actual science. I would argue that it's not even soft science fiction because while we're told that they've gone into space, nothing that has been said in this book makes sense. So I don't think it's soft science fiction. It's not speculative because it all happens inside Folsom's batshit crazy mind. There is just nothing here to qualify as science fiction or speculative. It's just stream of conscience bollocks. I have noticed that of the authors and other people who want to give him credit, because he was apparently fairly active in the science fiction as well as in the adult writing communities, no one ever says that there's stories are fun. No one ever says that they have plots. No one ever claims that they have characters. But one thing that many of the authors do go there is, it's metafiction. He does metafiction. So I went to look at metafiction. It's a form of fiction that emphasizes its own narrative structure in a way that inherently reminds the audience that they are reading or viewing a fictional work. Well, sure, we can metafiction about this. It's certainly got its own narrative structure, and it's certainly inherently reminding the audience that nothing in here makes sense. It feels so good, says page 38, that it is the embarrassment, the source of his little cries. Folsom could not have imagined the simplicity and warmth of the sensations which the rock had given him. Intercourse with Nina is not to be minimized, particularly as it has been sanctified by the mating bond. He is not denying either some of the very sensuous experiences he has had in his lifetime, but is the unexpectedness of what the rock gives him. Yeah, unexpected, frotterizing rocks. Sure. Yeah, I don't think this is metafiction. I don't think this is science fiction. I think it's weird. If you want pure weird and you like the PKD version of weird, I think you might like this. I do not. I especially didn't like the bit with the aliens, because we're told there's aliens, but they're never described. So are they aliens? Are they humans? They've got horses. Maybe they're not aliens. Maybe this rock is actually a communicator device from a previous ship. That'd be my guess. I just can't be bothered wading through another 170 pages to find out if any of it makes sense. Because seriously, you need to scan one whole page to get maybe one or two sentences that actually in any way communicate everything. Most of it's just stream of conscious drivel. Malzburg also seems to have a fascination with tying people up and having them screaming. So earlier in the book, they got this one native following them back from the encampment, saying that he wants to learn. Now, how they understood that was never explained, but I don't really expect anything in this book to be explained, and I am not disappointed by that lack of expectation. So when they get him back and his voluntary come, they then tie him up and put him in an enclosure from where his screams interrupt them while they're talking about him. Questionable. Later on in the book, after Folsom has decided that his crew have disobeyed him by calling the alien Ezekiel and telling him about the New Testament, then he ties up one of his crew and puts him in a tent where his screams are upsetting the rest of them trying to have a conversation. Ouch. Ouch. I can't even. I don't know what it is. I disagree with it being science fiction. I understand why this book has only 9 reviews in total on Goodreads. I am amazed that most of them actually enjoyed it. I can't even just... I recommend that you don't. Malzburg. If you think that I'm being unduly unfair to him, go back and read my go back and listen to my considerably more studied review of the Sodom and Gomorrah business. That was appalling, but I finished it. This is appalling, and I'm not. If you think I'm doing Barry and Malzberg a disservice and that he did actually write something that wasn't misogynistic, homophobic, full of rape and bondage, and meaningless, utterly meaningless drivel of writing stream of consciousness, if you feel that I'm being unfair, suggest a book. I may consider it. Maybe. I'd have to be really, really masochistic for the time, but maybe I'm willing, in science fiction world, all things are possible. Suggest one if you've got one, but if it's anything like this, my recommendation is don't bother, and my recommendation to future omnivorous reader is back away from Malzburg slowly.